when you've got 3,000 pages of code to review, you get a bit weary, don't you? AI just doesn't seem to get weary. You know, once it's learnt the rules it's looking for, what I can foresee, it'll have to flag up some errors and maybe they get corrected. But ultimately, I think we'll get to the situation where one organisation's computers are just talking to another organisation's. There won't be that much human interaction.
Welcome, Hilary, to the Making It a Manufacturing podcast. Thank you for making time today to come and meet us. How was your first day being at the ISPE conference?
The conference has been really good. It's ever so well organised, and I've had the opportunity to see one of my heroes speak today. Okay. So, yeah, always good to see Sean Wynne in action.
Sean Wynne, yeah. Why is he particularly a fan favourite?
So I'm from the GAMP community, and he was one of the founders of GAMP. So he's seen it from the 80s, seen it through, and he just speaks common sense. It's just nice. It's like fresh water for the brain, isn't it?
With everything, it is these days with the amount of stuff going on in the world and things. We'll dive into a bit more of the conference and specifically your GAMP experience later on in the chat. But to begin with, I always ask the first question of, have you got any fun facts about yourself? I always ask 3. I never normally get 3. If you've got any fun facts.
So I suppose one of my hobbies is I like making fused glass things. So I've got a glass kiln at home, which is kind of nice. I have something in the corner that can get well over 800 degrees C, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't know when that becomes handy, other than winter, especially up north with it. So what is that? So you fuse glass, so you melt it and then fuse it.
Coloured glass, and you can fuse things flat, so make coasters, but you can also then slump it into different shapes and make bowls and plates.
Yeah, how did you get into that?
Oh, I don't know, I just love coloured glass, so I love stained glass, so I've just always, as little crafting things,
to do stuff.
Gone to courses, and then ultimately I've just got to get my own now.
Yeah, that is interesting. I've never met anybody do that before.
So maybe not fun, but different.
Different. Yeah, but it is a fun fact, I suppose. If I'm looking for any gifts, I suppose I'll let you know. I think to begin with, if maybe give a bit of an introduction to your role or potential sort of career. I know you're actively doing smaller projects at the moment, but a bit of an introduction to yourself before we dive into your overall career. Okay,
so I got sort of straight into automation when I was 18. So I was from an all-girls grammar school. My family were all in teaching. Okay. So then I said I wanted to be an engineer, and nobody really knew why. So I've got 2 degrees in engineering, and during the first one I was sponsored by a company doesn't exist anymore, but Courtaulds used to be a big name, and I was working for the engineering branch of Courtaulds. So that's how I got into automation. I was straight into the control and instrumentation department. Okay. So it was, and it's weird sometimes, I just landed on my feet. It really suits me, the way you have to think, the details you have to get into, and like looking at new technologies. So one of my first projects was for a company up in the northwest. It was a completely pneumatic controlled plant, and they decided to make the first steps and have a computer system. And they made cellophane, which is highly explosive in the production of carbon
northwest. That'll be close to where I'm from, I suppose. Carlisle? It's a bit
further south than that, but yes, it was Ulverston. So
Ulverston, I've heard of it.
That was my first job, taking this old pneumatic control system and convert it onto a computer system. Okay,
so first of all, CSV back then probably looks very different to what it is now within the multiple industries, I suppose. What specifically drew you to automation back then?
I think it was just a lucky chance. So one of the things I wanted to do was a broad-based engineering degree, and that was really because I didn't know enough about it to make a choice. I thought, keep your options open. But actually automation touches mechanical, electrical process. I love process engineering, so my glass kiln is quite processy. You can program that one up as well. And it was just real luck. And I think maybe the people who were recruiting me as well, they were quite careful about who they took on sponsorships.
Yeah.
a lot of investment of time. So I think they probably saw, oh, maybe this would suit us. So,
Yeah. So you didn't start in the life science industry.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So how did that evolve, and what drew you to life science, and what has kept you in the life science? Or
that's such a good question. Yeah. So I think people's attitudes to pharmaceutical companies has changed a lot over the time I've been working in it, which has been really the last 20, 25 years. And so there was the whole big pharma, we hate them. And then COVID happened, and we really love the life science industry now, don't we? So, but I think all the way through that, I was very interested in the fact that I think, you know, drugs used wisely and well have such an impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
They give them a better quality of life. They save their lives. And it was always a privilege to be involved in automation, to, you know, help make them and to make them efficiently and make them consistently. Yeah, so also I've been involved a lot in training people to pass that message on. Yeah. But it fed me the knowledge that we were doing some good.
I think fulfillment is the word I'm hearing from that, in terms of it gave you that fulfillment of helping, I suppose. Which I think my sort of stigma of engineering and automation, unless you study life science specifically at that time, naturally you'll probably fall in it. And I think a lot of people don't come from that first route of life science, and they come into it. So I think a lot of people find that within automation and engineering specifically, when there's nuclear, oil and gas, chemical, it's sort of, you've got so many options
nuclear at the beginning,
to pick with.
Which again was not a popular field, but nuclear, you know, I always said I kind of like going up to a light switch and being able to have some light, turn the switch and it comes on, you know, I quite like that. So again, feels very worthwhile. Yeah.
And I think one of the questions I'll dive into was some of the challenges that you early on in your career, in terms of the transitions that you've made. Were there any specific challenges technically, culturally, I suppose, at the time, sort of as you've gone through it? I suppose it's...
So, well, I suppose when the obvious thing is when I started, so my first job was in 1983, and there weren't that many women in engineering. And I was very pleased that the sponsoring company didn't seem to see that, you know, they were happy, good student, you know, they gave me the chance, but lots of people didn't. And also culturally, so I was in a professional design office, but there's like girly calendars on the walls, you know, so it was, that's weird. That's a weird environment to be working in. And also the first project I did, the one with the pneumatic control, the guy who was our customer, who I was doing the control system for, was really sceptical about having a woman do his, you know, take on his plan. And I was, I don't know, 22, 23.
So you had the young into that and experienced.
And at the end of the project, he said to me, wow, well, I've completely changed. I've started recruiting instrument engineers that are female. And I just felt, again, very worthwhile. I felt a bit of a pioneer. He had changed people's perceptions. And, you know, there is no barriers. Women are as good at engineering as men. We're all individuals, I think.
100%.
So.
I will dive into the whole diversity and things later on. That is something I want to touch on. I think it's really important. In terms of automation over the past 25 years, how has that changed? And I know that's a very broad, open question in a lot of areas, but in general...
Oh, I'm sorry, we're going back like 40 years since I started, so it's even bigger. But I suppose when we first started, I got into automation, so that was when I worked with Emerson, and it was the power of the controllers, and what the functionality was so limited. And you'd be busy writing a sequence, and then it just couldn't quite manage to load it up. It was just too big an ask of the system. And that's completely changed. And so that's one thing. Another thing that's really changed, it was 1988, but S88 is a model of writing software for automation, of how to break it down into equipment type software and sequence type software, and having that common vocabulary with everybody, the customers, and that made it so much easier. The systems, everybody had a standard idea of how they were going to do the control, whereas when I first started, we did all sorts of things.
It was just figure it out, and everyone
it is inventing the wheel every time.
Which for the life science industry and regulators probably isn't what
the more standard the better.
It's probably what you want. So I can only imagine looking back now to what it is with how things are now with CSV and GAMP and it's so different in terms of for the better,
much more
obviously.
Controlled. Yeah. I mean, I think all of the talks we've been having today, though, have said we've the community, the CSV community, has imposed a lot of rules to get the evidence that has been required, but everybody's taking a step back from that, and let's actually make code that works and collect a bit of evidence along the way, rather than, honestly, sometimes the whole focus got on to be the evidence that it worked rather than making the software work. So I think a bit of a pendulum swing there.
With everything. And from then to now, I know mindset and culture, attitudes around automation and integrating systems, and I think I often hear stories of automation belonging to IT in terms of how that dynamic sometimes works with some, especially CSV, you know, from that perspective. So how have you seen the cultural mind shift change?
Well, okay, in the last few years, I think there's been a big change in that a lot of our customers would take on the building of the systems themselves. So the structure, the servers and the network and everything would be taken in-house, and everything would be built in-house standards, whereas we would used to provide them a system and somebody else would provide them a system. And now they want that continuity, I guess mostly for cybersecurity reasons, and to have a stand and to really know what they've got in all of these pieces. The only problem with that is sometimes it wasn't compatible with the way we knew the system needed to build for our system, for our operations. So it was but those are the things that get ironed out. It's overall a better way forward, I think.
Is that something that is a challenge at the moment with trying to integrate multiple systems and how trying to get everything?
It's not the biggest challenge.
Well, maybe we're going to go into that in a bit then. I really wanted to hone in, I suppose, on automation, CSV. I know you've got an enormous amount of experience in DeltaV, which is a super hot topic across Europe with a lot of big players now integrating that into the automation systems. And I know firsthand how hard it is to find talented, skilled people with that specific experience that don't work for Emerson, which you've mentioned. So I suppose, before I dive into DeltaV itself, because I want to speak about that, could you explain a little bit around what it is and the benefits around the systems in an automation process?
So DeltaV specifically is a distributed control system. So that means if you imagine a factory, it's full of sensors gathering information about temperatures and pressures of what's going on in the production. So you can get a lot of information, and also you want to be able to control things. So you control valves, pumps, agitators. So DeltaV is the system that takes these inputs and uses that information and drives the outputs to make a product, which means a lot of stuff moving, lots of fluids moving around, being mixed, being heated up and being combined in the right way. And whilst you're doing that, collecting an awful lot of data to make sure you've done the right thing. All of which, if you compare that to how it was done manually years and years ago, you didn't have necessarily that data unless somebody was writing it down.
I think data is key these days, isn't it? I think for everything, it's where you analyse and improve, and actually that's your evidence.
With
I think, as well.
Pharmaceutical product, you have to have the correct data to show that you've made it correctly, or you can't release it. So that stays on your shelf until maybe never. For sure. And I think I know really talented CSV automation engineers that have been overlooked for certain jobs at businesses because they don't have the DeltaV knowledge or experience just yet. What advice would you give to them type of people in terms of upskilling themselves? Is there things that they can do or training? There's an awful lot available on YouTube. So I had a CSV team in Romania actually, and we would do bits of training, but also exposing yourself to the training material that's there on YouTube. It gives you a really good grounding in how the code is built up, and there's a lot. I'm not saying it's all current, and I wouldn't vouch for it all to be perfectly right, but there's a lot of information you can get there.
I think it's we've touched on podcasting today in terms of moving with times and things. I think these are skills that people are going to have to start developing in themselves if they want to move with the times, because it certainly is within automation. These systems are here to stay because they're improving how the flow works and
Yeah.
and the benefits of everything. I think in terms of the challenges around automation and integrating systems, is there any specific challenges that you've faced that you
Yeah.
could highlight, and maybe how you've overcome some of them?
I think something that's changed over the years is, I suppose people want automation quicker. The whole factory build is
Everything
quicker.
needs to be quicker.
Yeah, but more and more getting customers who don't really know what process they want to automate, and it actually needs to be based on quite a lot of detail.
Yeah.
So working with customers to try and generate that's definitely been a shift. We used to have people who came to the table knowing exactly what they wanted and how it wants to work. But I think plants are more complicated. You want multi-purpose plants, and so there's definitely a challenge in that initial, and that's where the project lives or dies, really. You get off to a good start, you'll have a good project usually. So having that initial information is really important.
Is it a thing that people want to automate everything? Like, do you know, I think there's a big thing. I think everyone validates everything. Everything gets validated when there's that nice balance, I think, of doing so much that can be used in an audit and being in that sort of grey area.
I think you can be clever about the validation. I think you need to validate what you need to validate. And actually, if a regulator's auditing you, to show that you can make that decision about what needs it and what doesn't need it, shows that you're more in control, actually, and it's more efficient. So, just validate the critical things, the GXP things.
One thing I was interested in getting your take on was the future. Not too much of the future of automation, and I suppose how OT will integrate with IT, and in particular cybersecurity.
Yeah. I suppose traditionally the automation systems have been very remote. They've not even been connected to networks and things. So yes, facing that challenge of now being part of the overall network. Cybersecurity is a big issue. And the other thing is that keeping systems up to date really helps you with cybersecurity. So we have some customers who are a little bit reluctant. They've got their system nice, it's validated, we don't want to mess it up, and to do an upgrade seems like the wrong thing to do. But the way to keep things current and safe and on, you've got all your virus protection always current. That's you have to keep moving. These are moving targets now, aren't they? So.
With updating things. I think it's it's integral, I think, to keeping ahead of times with the production. Facilities of the future, AI.
Oh yeah,
it's obviously the in topic.
It absolutely is the in topic. So it's I just love it. The little bits of dabbling I've done, it's so useful. It's becoming a friend, and I love the fact you can argue with AI.
Well, I've been told that you make sure you say your please and thank yous when you ask it to do something.
It's gonna blacklist you otherwise.
So I'm very polite to it when I ask things, but I'm using it on a daily basis now. It's really, really good to get information, data, knowledge
for everything. Down to my glass kiln and things, and finding supplies for things. But so recently I've been involved in updating a good practice guide, and I've been using AI to help me see how the standards that we based some of the original material on, how have they changed in the last 15 years, so that we can update the relevant passages in the text. So there's lots of things. I heard some people asking about training. So ISPE does a lot of training, and they were saying, but we're open to the market in Australia, but I don't know what the regulators are in Australia are. AI does.
You can
AI can give you, it's much more than a search engine. It can give you so much more, so quickly.
And is there anything in particular you've seen businesses using AI to help them? I don't know if you've got any examples of how to use it.
I haven't got examples of it being used, but certainly conversations about how it's going to be used. So one of the things... So automation engineers aren't computer system scientists. So we have to do a lot of training to say things like, well, if you're doing bespoke code, it needs something called a code review. You need to check the code has been written to good coding standards. That's so that later on we can maintain it easier. So just even things like comments in the text so that somebody can understand what the programmer was trying to achieve. AI could do that code review so well. It could also do a review against the requirements that code is being built with, and review the code with does it look like it's going to work?
Yeah.
Which we ask our SMEs to do as a code review, but when you've got 3,000 pages of code to review, you get a bit weary, don't you? AI just doesn't seem to get weary.
Yeah, and it'll do it in 80% quicker, I suppose.
No. Yeah. Flash of an eye. Once it's learnt the rules it's looking for, and then, yes, it's going to have to, what I can foresee, it'll have to flag up some errors and maybe they get corrected. But ultimately, I think we'll get to the situation where one organisation's computers are just talking to another organisation's. There won't be that much human interaction. Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but you just put something in your sat nav. You don't necessarily check it's going the right way. Do you just rely on it nowadays?
Which is a fault of my wife's quite often in terms of going the wrong places. I have to double check when we're going anywhere.
But it's the fact that so quickly we learn to rely on these things because they seem to help us, so we let them. And I think there's got to be some regulation around that. But
do you think that's far off? Or do you think do you think it's going to be?
No, I think that's an interesting question. So when I was at uni, talking like 1987, people were starting to talk about systems that were like an MES, a manufacturing execution system. I didn't really see those coming into being until 2005, say 2008, something like that. However, with AI, everything's accelerating, isn't it? You can see these changes. I'm going to be out of date very, very quickly. You can see these changes are just going to go so fast now. Yeah. So that's why we've got to get in and use it rather than worry about it.
I think you have to. I think you need to embrace. And I think the people that do embrace and the businesses that do utilise and learn and grow with it will have the biggest, I suppose, benefits from it. I think, is there any? Obviously, I think the big scare around AI is data, how easy it is to get things. What are the concerns in a business in life science around cybersecurity and AI? And is there anything that's...
Well, just as you said, so it's not really my field of expertise, but I'm sure there is that idea of somebody else is going to get my data, isn't there? And data as a commodity is now something that's so valuable. Used, to train your AI or whatever it is, that is going to be really something more important. But
we'll see. Let's see how the next few years go in terms of...
It's scary, isn't it? But exciting as well.
It is. Definitely. We started speaking at the beginning about a female in a male-dominated, I would say, industry within engineering and automation. I wanted to chat with you around, the topic in general, what your view is from then to now, and how it's changed in that time period.
Yeah, I really hope it has changed. I was actually watching something on the TV last night of a girl who decided she wanted to be a pilot. And even though she was in her mid-20s, she was saying she'd faced that, I had no role models, I didn't know women could do this. And so I was quite disappointed to hear that because, I do think things change. I do think people's... I definitely got to a point around about 2000 where I felt, I don't need to go into a meeting and actually prove I can do engineering, which used to be the case, I suppose.
How did you overcome that in terms of what got you to that point of not needing to feel? Is there anything you did or?
Well, I suppose it's confidence. I think what I did was pretend a lot of the time and just pretend to be confident about things, because actually, you're part of that whole atmosphere. You're part of people thinking you can't do it as well. So believing, and finally I just found out that I did.
You could.
I did.
You were
but
there.
Honestly, I was about 40 before I got to that point.
Yeah. And which is crazy because that's half of
your
career feeling that.
Absolutely. It's a shame.
It's just sad, really, and it shouldn't be like that, really, because you're.
I'd say guys probably feel the same as well, though.
100%. In terms of inferior and a stronger male in the room, I think it definitely is as a diversity piece. I think it is. You do meet people like that, and everyone has their challenges. But I think certainly as a pioneer of the early years coming into it, I think it will have massive benefits. And I must admit that the amount of female speakers as well at the ISPE, I noticed that.
The ISPE events are usually very well balanced.
Massively, which is great to see because it's given people the opportunity to speak, to show what they know and benefit from the work, and to learn as well. And I don't know if there's if you think there's anything we could be doing, or as an industry, or how we could improve that diversity within automation engineering.
I do think, you don't see on TV or films very much about engineering at all, actually. And you do get some sort of niche programs, don't you? But you don't see many women engineers on things. And I think for it just to be taken as normal is important. But as I was saying, I had a team in Romania. There's a hub in Romania. Emerson has about 1,000 people working there. And the stats are that it's all technical people, 43% women, 57% men, all the way up through the organisation.
That's amazing. That's in Cluj.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And it's just, it can be done. Yeah. And I loved the women that I recruited, fantastic. I've really had people, very bright people, really great dedication.
Yeah,
so can't knock it.
Yeah, I know a few of them that have been consulting, that have left Emerson and moved to Switzerland and worked at the Biogens, the Lonzas and things that have done it. And there's 100%. There's, looking back, it definitely, I didn't realise it probably was that split at the time when I was speaking to people.
You don't get that in UK companies. Yeah. And I just think it shows what can be done. It shows that that's...
Is there anything you think they did to promote that, or to drive that? Is it educational? Is it promoting from that early stage?
I was told that after communism, that people were... So parents of the kids had been very restricted as to what they could study, and so there was quite a boom in education. Yeah. And I suppose it's just okay for women to do engineering there, maybe, or do anything that you think that's what you're good at.
Yeah, amazing. And is there any advice that you would give, a bit of advice for young female engineers, automation, that are maybe 25, 30, even 35, I suppose, in terms of that, maybe going through some of the things you went through years ago?
I suppose one of the things is I had a family and actually found engineering a really good career to have a family in. Whereas I know other, professions that you would think it would be easy for a woman to have a baby and come back and still be regarded as a professional. So engineering has been really supportive. But what I had to do was become a contractor. Because the company didn't want to set a precedent of people going part-time or whatever it was going to take for somebody to have a family, but they would if I became a contractor. And that was quite a step. But then owning my own business and knowing that people wouldn't be giving you a job unless they thought you could do it really gave me help with the confidence issue. And was so flexible. I think my kids, until they were at secondary school, probably didn't even know I had a job, because I could be there, pick them up from school.
Yeah, you could do everything,
have the friends over, I could do everything. And it was a lovely way of life, and felt fully supported by the organisation.
It's a huge benefit to contracting, and the flexibility that it can give you, and why it's amazing with the perks of it. But I guess it's not for everybody. I think
there's a risk, isn't there?
The risks
of feeling next week I might not have an income. It was great in our marriage as well, because my husband had the steady job, but I could contract part-time and earn the same as he was. So it felt very much like a partnership, dynamic, and everything worked out nicely between us. So I suppose the advice I'd say is, don't be afraid to have a family, just get on and adapt. Be creative with that.
Amazing. And I wanted to speak about your current projects you've got going on at the moment, with ISPE and GAMP, and what you're doing with them, to give people a bit of an update of maybe what's to come and things. I suppose, without, I don't know how much detail you can give, but I suppose, what is it you're up to at the moment?
Right, so the first thing is the Process Control Good Practice Guide. So this is a guide that goes under GAMP 5 second edition, and we last updated it in 2010, so we've been busy updating that this year. It is crazy how much things have changed in those 15 years. So that should be out we're hoping in January. And there's some really good things there about AI, about digital tools, about modular systems. So that's been an exciting project to be involved in. There's been quite a lot of work. But it's great to disseminate that information, I think.
So how does that happen? Is there 4 or 5 people that are just SMEs, industry leaders, that come together and review, and put together their recommendations?
Yeah.
How does that process
happen? Okay, interesting question. So there's a GAMP global committee, and they identified this was a document that needed an update. And myself and my colleague Karen Ashworth, we give the training based on this guide for ISPE. So they approached us if we wanted to be the leaders. And actually, we've got a team of about 15 people worldwide. So interesting trying to organise meetings with people dialing
all
in.
over,
Just waking up, But it was a really dedicated team of people who've contributed to kind of really enthusiastic and wanting to help the industry with some of this new information.
Are there any key breakthroughs or things that, I don't know if you can say in terms of...
I just suppose it's got to be reactive. It's reflecting current practices and current... So none of it's a surprise, I suppose, but it's just, we all know AI is a big topic. How is that looking in... So we make sure that the content is process control system focused. So there's a chapter about that. So no surprises, but when I was reviewing things, it was just interesting, to hear about these different things. So one of my topics and what I spoke on today was about software tools. So how do we, you pick up a calculator or an Excel spreadsheet, and you wouldn't think about doing those tasks manually, would you? But with a tool to generate code, maybe from an input, or a tool to commission part of the plant digitally, you've got to ask yourself the question, how can we trust it? How can we use it? Do we need to do certain things to use this properly? And so investigating those processes and documenting those so that everybody can share from that is what we've been doing. Okay. So quite interesting stuff.
So everybody, January 2026.
Maybe order early for Christmas.
Christmas presents. We can give it a plug. And I know you've been doing a lot with ISPE in general, and you have done, I think, for a number of years. I think been involved. I was keen to understand a bit more what you do for them, and then also talk about what they've done for you in terms of the benefits and being a part of the community.
So currently I'm the chair of the UK GAMP community of practice, and twice a year we put on free forums for 120 people to come and learn about what's going on in the industry. And they're really well attended and great networking events. And I've done that because I was working for a supplier, and for a long time I was the validation engineer for Europe, and that was lonely and very hard to keep in touch. So this is a great place for everybody to keep in touch and to understand the new trends and the new things that are happening. And I've always felt that was really useful for me to know, and I wanted to pass it on to eventually when I had my own team as well. So I think with those confidence issues we've been talking about, it's great to feel you've tapped into the source and you're really getting absolutely up-to-date current information, and you're part of a team of people who you can debate these things with. So when risk assessments came in,
which is a big in thing at the moment, everything's quality risk management.
And doing a good risk assessment is really hard. And I was from a supplier as well, so I'm not even from the organisation initiating those risk assessments, but sometimes we had to understand it, we had to understand what the impact on us was going to be. So unpacking all of that and learning all of that, I don't think I could have done that without ISPE. So
which is amazing.
Really good organisation. Really, the GAMP community particularly has really helped me.
I think it's to have something accessible for everybody in the industry to learn, network, progress. I think is key. So
it's all provided by volunteers. So there's no axe to grind really. It's not there to make a lot of money. It's there to help us meet the regulations, but ultimately to keep people taking the drugs safe.
And my last question, how I end the podcast, is if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
So I did think about this one a bit. I think so when I was at I went to university, I was full of confidence because I was a all A's student, and in my first term, one of the lecturers said to the whole room, women can't do electrical engineering. And fool that I was 18 and I believed him. And I would go back to that person and say, don't listen to him.
Yeah.
You know, and that, I feel that from an academic institution, he was actually a lovely guy, but that's what he believed.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that that's changed. And that's probably what I would go and say. It's gonna. You don't have to, just be who you are.
Yeah, and do what you want
and
to
do it well, and it'll be okay.
Yeah, brilliant bit of advice. No, thank you so much for your time today. It was brilliant to dive into your background and current trends and everything, and hopefully I'll be able to catch up with you later on at the conference with a bit of free time. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye.